Ever find yourself just completely lost in one of those huge history books, like Will Durant's series, maybe, his volume on the Renaissance? It really does have this way of just pulling you right in.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly engaging stuff. And that's what we're doing today, a deep dive into Durant's Renaissance.
Right.
We want to pull out the key stuff, give you a really rich picture of this, pivotal time, but keep it concise.
Get those aha moments without being buried in detail.
Exactly. And also, critically, look at how Durant's work itself is viewed, the scholarly side of things, too.
Okay, good plan. So we've looked at quite a mix of things. Academic articles, critiques you find online, even on Reddit sometimes, and of course, lots of bits directly from Durant's Renaissance volume itself. It really feels like he's taking you on a personal tour.
It does. That's part of the appeal, isn't it?
So let's talk about that appeal, this Durant phenomena. Why do people connect with his writing so much? I know for me, it was that dramatic flair. It wasn't like any history class I ever had.
That's it, exactly. He makes these dense subjects feel like epic stories, really vivid. But that popular touch, it definitely attracts academic scrutiny, even.
Okay.
Some historians find his takes, especially on, say, Greece and Rome, incredibly stereotyped. That's a direct quote.
Incredibly stereotyped. Wow. Like how, can you give an example of that simplification? What gets lost?
Sure. You often get these sort of standard narratives, predictable rise and fall patterns.
Okay.
And like the classic contrast between freedom-loving Greece, which often just means Athens, really, maybe a little Sparta,
Right.
and then practically minded Rome. It smooths out a lot of the complexities, the nuances within those cultures.
Yeah, I can see that.
Some critics even call his style peripatetic, jumping around a lot.
Right.
Or one description I found quite striking was history being shoveled into and delivered in a wheelbarrow.
A wheelbarrow. Okay, that's memorable. So why should we, listening now, care about these criticisms when we're reading him?
Well, because it helps you read him better, with a more discerning eye.
Okay.
You can still totally appreciate the storytelling, the grand sweep of it all, but you're also aware of where he might be simplifying things or maybe pushing a certain interpretation. It just makes for a richer read, I think, more critical.
Right. So appreciate the story, but keep your historian hat on just a little bit.
Exactly.
So with that in mind, let's step into Durant's Renaissance. He actually said himself he wanted to enlarge the scale as he got closer to our own time.
Yeah, he felt the ideas and people from these effervescent centuries, as he put it, were especially vital for understanding ourselves today.
Effervescent centuries. I like that.
And it's interesting, he was quite upfront about not having formal art training. He admitted he was just giving his impressions, his preferences, which kind of makes it more approachable, doesn't it? Less intimidating.
Yeah, it feels more personal. And he had this really key idea about the Renaissance itself, didn't he? Not quite the sudden rebirth we often imagine.
Exactly. He saw it more as a fulfillment rather than a revolution.
A fulfillment.
Yeah. He argued that medieval maturation actually played a much bigger role than simply digging up old Greek and Roman stuff.
Huh?
That continuity is a really important thread in his telling.
That does shift things, thinking about the roots being deeper in the Middle Ages.
It really does. So for this deep dive, we'll sort of follow Durant's path through the big Italian city-states, Florence, Rome, Venice, and meet some of these, well, truly remarkable characters.
Okay, let's start with Florence. The cradle, they call it. Durant paints it as super wealthy, right?
Yep.
Richest place after Venice in the 14th century.
Absolutely. You've got something like 80 banking houses. 80. Including the big names, the Bardi, Peruzzi, Strozzi, Pitti, and of course the Medici.
The Medici, yeah.
This wasn't just local banking. It made Florence the financial capital of Europe, and that massive wealth, well, it funded everything else. Art, ideas, architecture.
And it wasn't just about having money. It was about, like, financial sophistication, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Durant mentions early insurance.
Yes. Around 1300, which is centuries before England gets there, and double entry bookkeeping by 1381, it shows this incredible practical ingenuity alongside all the art. It's the engine underneath.
And you see the pride in the buildings. The Duomo, Santa Maria del Fiore, Santa Croce, that imposing Palazzo Vecchio, the Signoria, which Durant notes really reflects the city's constant factional fighting.
They're powerful symbols, and behind so much of it, you find the Medici.
Right.
Cosimo de' Medici, for example. What a character.
Tell me more.
Well, he bankrolled Florentine wars, got exiled in 1433 because people were jealous of his influence, basically.
Right.
But then he comes back a year later in triumph, having used his connections in Venice. Super savvy, and a huge patron of learning. He set up libraries, even paid off the debts of a scholar, Niccoli, just so his manuscripts could become a public collection.
Wow, paying off debts for books.
Yeah.
That's dedication. Then there's Lorenzo, his grandson. Lorenzo the Magnificent.
Ah, Lorenzo. He really had those aesthetic sensibilities. A poet himself, Durant, says he restored to the vernacular the literary primacy that Dante had established. High praise.
But his life wasn't all poetry readings, was it? That Ponzi conspiracy sounds intense.
Oh, incredibly dramatic. 1478, plotters tried to assassinate him and his brother Giuliano during Easter Mass in the cathedral.
During Mass. That's bold. What did that tell you about Florence, then?
It tells you that even amidst all the beauty and philosophy, power politics were absolutely cutthroat. Danger was real.
Yeah.
And you see that intellectual energy everywhere, too. Think of Pico della Mirandola. Only 24 publishes 900 propositions on everything imaginable.
900?
Yep. And writes, on the dignity of man, arguing humans have limitless potentialities. We can sink to beasts or become godlike. A huge idea for the time.
That's pretty profound. But the artists themselves, they weren't always living such lofty lives, right? Fra Filippo Lippi, for instance.
Oh, Lippi. Durant describes him as incredibly amorous. Apparently, Cosimo Medici once locked him up to force him to paint.
Locked him up.
Yeah, but Lippi wanted out for other pursuits, so he cuts up his bed sheets, makes a rope, and climbs out the window.
No way. What did Cosimo say?
Cosimo apparently just sighed and said, geniuses are celestial forms and not pack asses. Basically, you can't force them.
Huh. Great line.
And then Lippi runs off with a nun, Lucrezia Buti. They even have a son, Filippino Lippi, who becomes a famous painter, too. Durant mentions a legend that his painting was so realistic, some kid tried to hide treasure behind a figure he'd painted on a wall.
That's amazing. Okay, so from Florence, let's head to Rome. Papal power, big ambitions, incredible art. Feels like a different vibe.
Definitely different. If Florence is the cradle, Rome is more like the grand, sometimes conflicted heart. You've got the church wrestling with its power, both spiritual and temporal.
And the Borgias definitely fit into that picture. Alexander VI. Durant says his election brought rejoicing, but also some fear he'd just, look after his family.
Which, to be fair, he did. His kids, Lucrezia and Cesare, were absolutely instruments of policy, pawns in his game.
There were those dark rumors about Lucrezia, too, the incest accusations.
Yeah, though Durant points out, and later scholars mostly agreed, those were likely cruel calumnies, political smears. Cesare, though, he was the real deal militarily.
How so?
Described as splendid and magnificent, utterly fearless, strategically brilliant, never lost a battle, apparently. He really embodied that ruthless Renaissance drive for power.
Then goes Julius II, the warrior pope. That
That's
big
right.
name says a lot.
It does. He had this immense energy, this terribilita, that kind of awe-inspiring, almost terrifying intensity.
Right.
He fought ruthlessly to protect and expand the Papal States. Some criticized him for shedding Christian blood to build an empire for the church.
But he also commissioned some of the greatest art ever.
Absolutely crucial patron. He's the one who gets Michelangelo working on the Sistine Chapel ceiling and his own massive tomb project.
Which Michelangelo famously didn't really want to do, the ceiling anyway.
Yeah. Right. He kept saying painting was not his forte. But look what happened. He essentially sculpts with paint. Those monumental figures. Durant says his style, those dramatic exaggerations, basically paved the way for mannerism in the Baroque.
Incredible. And after Julius, we get Leodex, Lorenzo de' Medici's son, back to the Medici popes.
Yeah, Leotex, described as more good-natured, became a cardinal at 14, which is just wild.
Definitely.
But his reign, well, it was lavish. Huge spending on art, the court, everything. It strained the papal finances so badly they resorted to selling church offices, cardinal hats.
The indulgences issue.
Exactly, which directly fueled Luther's anger in Germany. But Leo was also a huge supporter of learning. He backed Aldus Manutius's printing efforts, set up Greek academies, and was thrilled by discoveries like the Laocoon statue group found in 1506. Big excitement in Rome over that.
And Raphael was working for these popes, too.
Immensely important. Leo made him chief architect for St. Peter's. His School of Athens fresco is just breathtaking, summing up centuries of Greek philosophy.
Yeah, stunning work.
And his tapestries for the Sistine Chapel caused a furor, Durant says. People thought they were the most beautiful things ever made. Though Vasari, the art historian, hinted that Raphael's enthusiastic social life, his secret pleasures, might have led to his early death. Another side of the Renaissance coin.
Genius and indulgence, side by side. Okay, let's sail over to Venice, the Serene Republic. Sounds calmer.
Well, serene might be relative. It had a unique character, very efficient, but also quite severe justice system.
Okay.
But it was also known as an asylum, a safe haven for refugees, intellectuals fleeing trouble elsewhere, and fiercely independent, especially from the Pope. They defied papal interdicts, basically, religious sanctions, multiple times.
So pragmatic, independent, and their art. Titian comes to mind.
Titian is the quintessential Venetian master. Durant talks about his pagan mood in works like the Bacchanal. It's like the pagan Renaissance in full command. Rich colors, sensuous forms,
His portraits were amazing, too, right? Really capturing people's character.
unparalleled. He just had this way of capturing personality, power, life. Durant contrasts him with Michelangelo. Titian's art is more about beauty and joy, embracing the world, less of that Florentine angst or introverted brooding.
It's interesting how Durant knows he painted virgins and Venuses with the same brush. That blend of sacred and secular seems very Venetian.
It does. And Venice was also home to Aldus Manutius, the great printer.
Right, you mentioned him under Leo Atex.
Yes, based in Venice. His goal was massive. Collect, edit, print, and distribute all the important Greek literature cheaply. Think of the impact of making those texts widely available.
Huge. And then there's Isabella d'Este, la prima donna del mondo, Durant calls her.
She's a fantastic example of the Renaissance woman, highly intelligent, politically astute ruler of Mantua, incredibly cultured.
Collected art.
Oh yes, with the judgment of a scholar and the discrimination of a connoisseur. Corresponded with everyone who was anyone, popes, dukes, artists. Leonardo da Vinci drew her portrait. That tells you her stature.
What a lineup of cities and people. But it wasn't just the big three, right? Other places mattered too.
Absolutely. Durant touches on Milan under the Sforzas, with Leonardo there. Ferrara, known for its literature like Boiardo. Siena had incredible art too, like Jacopo della Criscia's fountain, the Fonteggaia.
And that artist, Sodoma, with the controversial frescoes.
Right, Giovanni Antonio Bozzi, known as Sodoma. Apparently, his joy in painting the human form was so evident that an adept had to get some nude figures in his monastery frescoes covered up.
Ah, for the monk's peace of mind.
Exactly. And Naples had Sannazara's Arcadia, kicking off that whole pastoral literature trend. It was happening everywhere.
So shifting gears a bit, what about the overall character, the sort of the morality of the time? Durant talks about a moral release. What does he mean?
He suggests that the constant warfare, the political instability, the breakdown of old feudal customs, and even religious belief led to a kind of loosening of morals. Expediency often trumped ethics.
So more violence.
Definitely. Private violence, family feuds ending in assassinations, dueling, it was pretty rough and tumble. The old rules just didn't seem to apply in the same way.
Which sets the stage for someone like Machiavelli.
Precisely. His famous line, "All men are bad and ever ready to display their vicious nature," sounds cynical, but Durant presents it as pragmatic for the time.
Because leaders needed to be tough.
Machiavelli thought so. He argued that to unify Italy, a ruler might have to use force and fraud. It reflects that hard-nosed reality they were living in. Though Machiavelli himself was complex, he admired Cesare Borgia's ruthlessness, but criticized him later when things went south.
Interesting how ideals and reality clashed. What about science and medicine? Any progress there?
Yes, definitely. Durant calls it a renaissance of anatomy. Dissections became more common, even got papal approval from Sixtus IV.
That's a big step.
Huge. And more hospitals were being built. Venice even had a lazaretto, basically an isolation hospital for infectious diseases, the first in Europe. And you get figures like Girolamo Cardano, a real polymath physician, mathematician, wrote a poem on syphilis, really pursued scientific knowledge, lived to be old by following his own medical advice, apparently.
Good for him. And what about just, daily life, manners, fun?
Italy was setting the trends for Europe in social graces, hygiene, elaborate clothes. Durant mentions Giuliano de' Medici wearing outfits worth 8,000 ducats.
8,000 ducats.
Yeah.
For clothes.
Incredible sum. And entertainment shifted too. Classical Roman comedies, often quite ribald and earthy, started replacing the old religious plays.
A change in taste.
Definitely. And music was huge, especially at court. Rulers competed to hire the best musicians and instrument makers. Remember, Leonardo was welcomed partly for his musical skills. Isabella d'Este loved music, even specified she needed light keys on her clavichord because her hands were delicate.
It paints such a vivid picture of the era's culture.
It really does. So Wrapping up our look at Durant's Renaissance, it's this incredibly vibrant, complex period he brings to life. Artistic genius, intellectual ferment, political chaos, all swirling together, a time of multiform mental activity, as he says, that really did shape the world we live
It
in.
was clearly an age of profound beauty, but also, yeah, pretty stark contradictions, full of brilliance and barbarity almost. So thinking about all this deep dive, what does this whole Renaissance exploration suggest about how we as societies handle progress and power today, especially when old ways are challenged and new ideas flood in?